Welcome to the EPG Pathshala's linguistics course, specifically to the paper Morphology and Syntax. Within that paper, the module that we're now going to commence is about the limits of constituency. We begin by looking at the insights that are involved. Recall that we have told you about construction types involving a certain number of heads and a certain number of dependents, depending on which type of construction is in question. And recall what we have said about parts of speech and parsing, and how all that we have been saying is summarized in the syntactic trees we have been drawing for you, where the nodes of the tree are labeled by using terms like adjective, which are part of speech terms, and adjective phrase, which are terms expressing constructions where words which are heads and dependents come together to form these constructions. Throughout the tree, you have what are called mothers and daughters, the nodes above, and what is at the end of the branches below. The daughters are called constituents, and they form these constructions labeled at the mother node. Those mother nodes are the constitute nodes. So for example, if you have the adjective attractive and a modifying adverb very, you have very attractive side by side. Above very, you have the word, you have the node label adverb. Above attractive, you have the node label adjective. Above adverb and adjective, you had adjective phrase. Now in this arrangement in a tree, we say that very and attractive are constituents that are put together into this constitute. That is what these words mean. These relations are called constituency relations, and that is why this module is called the limits of constituency. To talk about the limits, we have to first show you how the constituency relations are stated exactly in formal terms. The formalism we use depends on how the tree is drawn. It unpacks what the tree is saying. In a certain sense, when we draw the trees, we have already given you all the information. In another sense, we have not expressed the information formally. We are now trying to express the information formally. You are best placed to understand this if you participate in constructing the formalism. Consider a very simple sentence. Poor John ran away. Subject, poor John, predicate, ran away. In such a sentence, our tree is going to show you at the top S, there is a sentence. We will break the sentence up into two pieces. Noun phrase, verb phrase. The noun phrase in turn breaks up into two pieces. Adjective, noun. Under adjective we write poor, under noun we write John. So that's poor John taken care of. The verb phrase breaks up into two pieces. Ran away, ran is a verb, away is a particle. So VP breaks up into V and PRT for particle. Under V we write ran, under PRT we write away. That is the entire tree. Poor John ran away. Adjective, noun, verb, particle, noun phrase, verb phrase, sentence. For this tree, we need formal statements sponsoring every part of the tree. We will use two kinds of formal statements. One kind of formal statement will sponsor the bottom of the tree, the lexical items. These are called lexical statements or lexical rules. Each word has a lexical rule for it. Poor John ran away means 4 lexical rules. Poor is sponsored by a lexical rule that says adjective, arrow, poor. We don't write the full word adjective, it's too complicated. We write ADJ in some systems, A in some systems. You pick your system, it doesn't matter, just be consistent. Don't write A in some places and ADJ in other places. That's messy work. John is sponsored by a lexical rule that says N, arrow, John. Ran is sponsored by a lexical rule that says V, arrow, ran. And away is sponsored by a lexical rule that says PRT, arrow, away. PRT is short for particle. The rest of the tree is sponsored by another type of formal statement. They are called phrase structure rules because they are rules that specify the structure of phrases. We call them PS rules for short. PS short for phrase structure. So the top of the tree comes from or is sponsored by S, arrow, and PVP. Instead of arrow, we often say goes to. S goes to in PVP. NP goes to AN, or if you prefer, ADJN. VP goes to VPRT. That's all. We have this much for the first simple sentence. We work this out for you in an exercise. Our next exercise asks you to work out how a slightly more complicated sentence forces you to tweak the phrase structure rules to obtain the tree, which is a bit more complicated, one step more complicated. How is it more complicated? Well, poor John ran away didn't have a single determiner. It didn't have the word the anywhere, or the word this, or the word that. So we ask you then, given the tree that we draw for you to make things easy, for the sentence, the quick fox jumps over the lazy dog, we ask you to look at the tree and draw phrase structure rules. And then we ask you to tweak it a bit more in another slightly more complicated sentence. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. You will find step by step how we are increasing the complexity of the tree and correspondingly what needs to be stated by the rules that sponsor every part of the tree. What is missing in this? What is missing is expressed by our calling these rules naive phrase structure rules. Why are they naive? Because these rules do not express one of the important types of insight that we have been repeating over and over again in the recent modules. Insights about which is the head and which is the dependent in a construction. For example, if we write NP as the mother node for poor John, and under it if we write adjective and noun, and under adjective we write poor, under noun we write John, our system is not informing you that the N is the head of the NP. Yes, your ordinary common sense, your intelligence allows you to guess that if there is an NP mother and the daughters are called A and N, obviously N is a privileged daughter because its name sounds like NP. That's the head, therefore the other one is the dependent. Sure, you can apply your intelligence and figure this out, but the system didn't tell you. The system is leaving it to you to figure this out. The system should be able to tell you. In a more advanced way of doing this game, which we will not teach you in this basic morphology and syntax course, which will be taught in an advanced syntax course, part of the same setup of EPG Pathshala, you will be shown another more sophisticated version of phrase structure representations. Instead of NP in that sophisticated version, they will show you how to write N bar, that is the letter N with a straight line on top called a bar. That kind of system is called bar notation. correspondingly ran away won't be called a VP, it will be called a V bar. In the advanced version of phrase structure tree drawing, where we draw N bar and V bar instead of NP and VP, the fact that there is a bar makes a statement to you, a formal statement. N bar says, hello, I am a construction whose head is N. V bar says, hello, I am a construction whose head is V. That is what is meant by using bar. If you want several levels of bar notation, you get N bar bar, V bar bar. That is what bar notation is about, and bar notation, not taught to you in this morphology and syntax course, but only in an advanced sequel to this course, is better at expressing the insights about heads and dependents compared to what we are teaching you now. Why are we not teaching you bar notation at this stage? Because phrase structure rules, with or without bar notation, either in the naive form that we are teaching you in this basic course or in the sophisticated form that you will be shown in an advanced course, is insufficient. This has been known for more than half a century. We know that phrase structure rules, however hard they try, however sophisticated they get, cannot do certain essential syntactic jobs. For those jobs, they have to be supplemented by another device called a syntactic transformation. For this reason, we are not trying very hard at this stage of the game to show you the best possible way of writing phrase structure rules, the best possible way of initially drawing phrase structure trees. Having said that, it is of course important to get right as many details as possible at this stage. We want you to look at how far the phrase structure system can go and where it runs into dead ends or limits. To understand where the dead ends are located, you have to travel efficiently. If your car breaks down, you won't even reach a dead end. You need to know where the dead end is, and for that you have to go all the way and reach it. That is why we are being careful to develop phrase structure rules and to show you where their limits lie. That is why this module is called the limits of constituency. To look at the limitations of the phrase structure model, we ask you to consider some sentences that exemplify the comparative construction. Sentences 7 and 8 are ideal for this purpose. 7, Ali sent more boxes to Delhi than Rahul sent to Mumbai, uses a comparative structure with more and than. In contrast, sentence 8, Sue sent as many boxes to Shillong as Mimi sent to Bhopal, uses the positive term as many rather than the comparative term more, but both positives and comparatives take part in a comparative structure. We ask you to appreciate right now the ambiguity of the term comparative. The comparative construction or the comparative structure covers the whole phenomenon. Within this entire phenomenon, a particular element, the element more and its corresponding preposition than, is the comparative point on the dimension. On that dimension, there are 3 points: positive, comparative, superlative, corresponding to tall, taller, tallest. But in the comparative construction, what you're going to say is as tall as for positive, taller than for comparative, and tallest outer for superlative. So the comparative construction involves this comparative dimension on which there are 3 points: positive, comparative, superlative. So the word comparative is ambiguous between that middle point on the comparative dimension, in the middle between positive at the bottom and superlative at the top, And the other meaning of the word comparative is to name the system as a whole, which comprises the entire dimension and all the effects associated with it. We hope that you're not confused by this. So, 7, Ali sent more boxes to Delhi than Rahul sent to Mumbai, is a comparative sentence in the comparative network. Sue sent as many boxes to Shillong as Mimi sent to Bhopal is a positive sentence in the comparative network. Is that clear? This phenomenon cannot be optimally expressed in phrase structure terms because you're trying to express a dependency between more on the left and than on the right, between as much, as many on the left and as on the right. You could do it in phrase structure terms if the preposition on the right was always than. But it is not always than. It is than if on the left you have the comparative term more. It is as if on the left you have the positive term as many. There are 2 degrees of difficulty here. We are first showing you simple comparative constructions. For these, it is marginally possible for phrase structure rules and lexical rules working very hard to somehow express the facts. But when you push it, when you provide examples of nested comparatives, even these best efforts of the phrase structure system fall flat on their face. We're going to show you step by step how far the best, most strenuous efforts of the phrase structure system deliver some goods and where those deliveries stop being sufficient. Consider the examples we have seen so far. Ali sent more boxes to Delhi than Rahul sent to Mumbai, and Sue sent as many boxes to Shillong as Mimi sent to Bhopal. Suppose you set up a feature, CMP, for comparative. And suppose you say that that feature has 2 values, plus CMP, the comparative value of the degree feature, and minus CMP, the positive value of the degree feature. If you have these 2 feature values, plus and minus comparative, you can place the feature value at the top of the tree, at the S. So you can write S plus comparative plus CMP. That means the sentence says at the very start, I have decided that throughout my body there will be lots of plus comparative items. Alternatively, the sentence can choose the positive value on the degree dimension. Then it says S minus CMP. That's the positive value. That says I'm a sentence that has decided to spread positive items all over my body, not comparative items. If this feature is copied from S onto NP and copied from S onto VP and then from NP to all the daughters of NP and from VP to all the daughters of VP, it keeps getting copied all over the tree. Then you can guarantee that if there is a more on the left, then there will be a than on the right. If there is an as many on the left, then there will be an as on the right. Why? Because there is a single feature copied all over the tree. That feature is either that of more and than, or the feature shared by as many and as. No problem, if you were able to do this. This very strenuous effort on the part of the phrase structure system and that of lexical rules to deliver the goods fails when you go to nested comparisons that our e-text calls double comparisons. Consider sentence 18. Ali sent as many more boxes than Rahul as Sue did. What does that mean? That means Ali sent more boxes than Rahul. The difference between Ali's boxes and Rahul's boxes was, let us say, 17. Sue also sent more boxes than Rahul. The difference between Sue's boxes and Rahul's boxes was 17. That is the statement being made when you say Ali sent as many more boxes than Rahul as Sue did. Likewise, you can say Ranjan drinks as much less milk than Ojas as Rumi does. Here you are first comparing Ranjan's milk drinking with Ojas's milk drinking, finding the difference. Then you are comparing Rumi's milk drinking with Ojas's milk drinking, computing the difference, and then you compare the two differences and you find that they are identical. In other words, the Ojas Ranjan deficit and the Ojas Rumi deficit are equal. You express that by saying Ranjan drinks as much less milk than Ojas as Rumi does. These sentences are completely beyond the reach of any possible phrase structure rules and lexical rules working as hard as they want to. Why? Because we just showed you what phrase structure systems can do. They can take a feature, put it at the top of the tree, and make it trickle down all over the tree. There is no way that such a trick, such a coding trick, can handle double comparison. Because double comparison has to say, on the left, you have a nested structure. One part of the structure is positive and one part of it is comparative. On the right, you have a nested structure. One part of it is positive and one part of it is comparative. And across the two nested structures, you must match as much with as and less with than, as many with as and more with than. This double matching is too intricate for the machinery of phrase structure rules and lexical rules to express, even with the feature device thrown in for good measure. To sum up so far, we have said that syntax often requires you to express a long-distance dependency, and that the phrase structure system cannot express long-distance dependency. Why? Because the phrase structure system depends on locally relevant rewrite rules. It tells you on the left of the tree to make a decision. Do you want as many or more? Do you want as much or less? You have to choose between a positive and a comparative value. On the right-hand side of the tree, the system asks you, do you want than or as? You have to choose between a comparative than and a positive as. These two choices are done independently of each other. There is no way for the phrase structure tree to make the two choices happen at the same time, except by throwing the same feature all over the tree. And that doesn't allow you to handle the details for intricate nested choices, where one choice depends on another choice far away, in this intricate nested way. You need a more sensitive instrument to do this kind of matching. Phrase structure rules don't have that sensitivity. That is the first major limitation of phrase structure grammars, that they cannot express long-distance dependencies efficiently. The second difficulty is a bit more complicated. It shows up in sentences like John looked up the number, having a variant, John looked the number up. Sue put away the books, having a variant, Sue put the books away. Rahim took out the garbage, having a variant, Rahim took the garbage out. The student wrote down the examples, having the variant, the student wrote the examples down. Here the difficulty is that the exercise we tried to do for the case of the comparative construction, where a strenuous, hard-working phrase structure system tries to impose a feature structure on the S and make it trickle down to the rest of the tree, and thereby encode the fact that the whole tree is going to be comparative or the whole tree is going to be positive. That kind of exercise cannot even get off the ground in the case of look up and put away and take out and write down, because there is no such thing as an up feature, an away feature, an out feature, and a down feature. You cannot make up a feature at the drop of a hat for all the particles in the English language. If English has 35 particles, you cannot create 35 features. That would make a mockery of the entire system of features. as you know from your study of phonology. If a language has 52 different phonetic segments, you don't create 52 features to talk about them. You try to manage with 10 features or 8 features or something. The same applies in syntax. So here you have a constituent like looked up, or a constituent like put away, or a constituent like took out, spreading itself out over the tree the way your Sanskrit stem spreads itself out when an infix needs to get into the middle of it. If you remember, the Sanskrit stem becomes a discontinuous stem. Here, these verb particle constructions like look up, put away, take out, and write down become discontinuous verb particle constructions, with the particle being stretched out and placed at the right edge of the sentence, far away from the verb it is connected to. So this is the second limitation of a phrase structure system, that it cannot express discontinuities in the structure of a constituent. It cannot handle discontinuous constituents. The third difficulty with phrase structure systems has to do with something that we promised to unpack for you slowly, the contrast between active voice sentences and passive voice sentences. Consider the 3 active sentences. Tim admires sincerity, Rahman threw the stone into the lake, and Sudeep asked no questions. We hope you notice our very loudly proclaimed secularism with the Hindu name Sudeep, the Muslim name Rahman, and the Christian name Tim. The Christian name Tim side by side. These sentences, when they go into the passive, come out as sincerity is admired by John, the stone was thrown into the lake by Rahman, and no questions were asked by Sudeep. Notice that the subject of every passive sentence corresponds to the object of every active sentence, and that the verb in each case has selectional restrictions on it that have to be turned upside down. Consider Tim admires sincerity. You cannot say sincerity admires Tim. Why? Because the verb admire is compatible with an inanimate object. Of course, it can take a human object as well. You can say Tim admires Bill, for example. But the point is, admire selects a subject that has to be human. If you go to the passive, sincerity is admired by John, you've got the passive of admire taking an inanimate subject that is incompatible with the selectional requirements of the verb admire. Why is the sentence grammatical? The sentence is acceptable because when you go into the passive, you interchange the selectional properties of the subject and the right-hand side of the sentence. The object selectional properties move into those of the subject for the passive. Why? Because the object of the active really becomes the subject of the passive. That is what you need to say, and this is something that the phrase structure and lexical system does not have the resources to state. How do you address these limitations? You address these limitations by supplementing the phrase structure and lexical rules with an additional type of device. This additional type of device is called a syntactic transformation. Going back to the overall debate in terms of which this paper, Morphology and Syntax, is framed between the item and arrangement approach and the item and process approach, you will immediately see that phrase structure rules and lexical rules implement the item and arrangement approach because they are taking these lexical items and arranging them in a tree. They are building a tree for you on the basis of IA thinking. What we now need is transformations which will change the tree by subjecting the tree to a process. This instantiates IP thinking. The entire field of morphology and syntax involves a constant interplay between IA devices and IP devices under the conditions of a slow transition we are all making towards the greater use of IP devices. What does a grammatical transformation or a syntactic transformation need to do? It needs, for example, take a sentence like Tim took out the garbage. Break up this constituent took out by moving the particle out to the right edge of the sentence. I'm sorry, I'm doing this from my point of view. Here is take out from your point of view, and out goes to the right edge of the sentence. As a result, Tim took out the garbage becomes Tim took the garbage out. The word out moves to the right edge of the sentence past the phrase the garbage. That is what you need to do. Now remember, we are trying to be exact. We are trying to get everything right, formally, without missing any details. You have been exact in creating the tree. You have to be exact about changing the tree. How do you do this exactitude? We will show you the full formal detail of a syntactic transformation in the next module. In this module, we want you to concentrate on the job that has to be done. We want you to take a pencil and make marks on the wall for where the drilling has to be done, where we want a hole. So take out your pencils and sharpen them and get ready to make those marks on the wall. We give you an exercise in which you are asked to say precisely for a particular transformation what the transformation has to see, exactly where it has to look for it, and exactly what the transformation is going to be asked to do. We are not asking you to give formal statements in any mathematically exact form. We are asking you to say in plain English what the task is and where the task has to be carried out, as exactly as you can using ordinary words. That is the exercise at this stage of the game. The result of adding this IP apparatus, syntactic transformations, to the machinery you have so far, which is IA machinery, PS rules and lexical rules, is that your grammar will be what is called a transformational grammar, not a phrase structure grammar. A phrase structure grammar is one that only has phrase structure rules and lexical rules. A transformational grammar is one that, in addition to this machinery, also has syntactic transformations. They don't replace phrase structure rules and lexical rules, they supplement them. They carry out the intricate jobs that PS rules and lexical rules are not equipped to handle. In addition to your grammar becoming transformational, it also becomes generative. What do we mean by calling it generative? Why do we call the entire syntactic enterprise of our period the generative syntactic enterprise or the generative enterprise? The reason is that exact sciences, when they talk about specifying all the members of a set, use the term generating that set. When you say you've generated a set, when you say you have devices capable of generating a set, you're claiming that you're capable of specifying all the members of the set and only the members of the set, which in an abbreviated form becomes all and only the members of the set. A transformational grammar has the power and the precision to be able to generate all the sentences of a language. That is the set that you have to specify when you wish to handle the data of a language exactly and comprehensively. So the claim being made is that after adding transformations to the machinery of a phrase structure grammar, you have attained the power to generate all and only the sentences of a language, both with respect to their expression, the sound, the pronunciation, and with respect to their content, what the sentences mean. For example, if the sentence is ambiguous, you should be able to handle the ambiguity, etc. This is why the kind of grammar that we are teaching you is generically called transformational generative grammars of human languages. They are transformational because among the various devices they use, there are syntactic transformations. They are generative grammars because they claim to specify all and only the sentences of the language with respect to sound and meaning, without mistakes and without omissions. That is the claim being made by using the term transformational generative syntax, or TG syntax, as the term is often abbreviated. To summarize, in this module, we have taken the expression of constituency to a level of formal exactitude that you require in order to bring out the limitations of the model. We have then brought out what the limitations are. We have finally suggested a way of addressing these limitations and going beyond the limited capacity of a phrase structure model. So in the first step, we unpacked the ideas of a constituent structure analysis of syntax. We have unpacked what we have learned from traditional grammar and structural syntax by formalizing them in terms of two types of rules that sponsor the kinds of tree we have been showing you how to draw. These two types of rules are called phrase structure rules for the top and middle of the tree, and lexical rules for the bottom of the tree, which are responsible for introducing the words. After that unpacking, we gave you some crucial examples to show that, unfortunately, exact as it is, very good as it is, this machinery of phrase structure rules and lexical rules is not enough. It cannot handle certain types of difficulty that any reasonable syntactic account should be able to solve. We have itemized three types of difficulty for you by showing you certain comparative constructions which exemplify long-distance dependencies that phrase structure grammars cannot handle. Secondly, we took you to discontinuous constituents, such as an English verb particle construction that has exported its particle to the extreme right edge of the sentence. And thirdly, we showed you the selectional difficulties that arise when we try to account for active-passive pairs of sentences. Given these three limitations that we listed for you, showing you examples every time, we have now given you a generic solution and tried to exemplify the way it works only for the second of the difficulties, for the discontinuous constituents. We have not told you how the transformational approach overcomes the first limitation or the third limitation. That is for later in the course. We promised not to leave you in the lurch and not to postpone it to the advanced syntax course. In addition to listening to what we had to say in the oral part of this work, we hope you will refer to the e-text and keep up with your reading, because unless you keep doing your reading, you will not have a proper balance between listening and reading. We also hope that you will remember to keep doing the supplementary reading that the course recommends for your use. With these words, we take your leave and we thank you for your attention.